From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
Always great to have you with us on Ticats This Week, getting set for another game, another big game as the Tiger Cats visit Montreal. Of course, so much on the line with the East Division, second place, first place, the tiebreaker if the Tiger Cats are able to win. I'm RJ Broadhead along with the busiest podcaster of the week, Luke Tasker. How are you holding up after all these podcasts this week?
Oh, man, just hydrating, trying to get my rest here and there. Three appearances in 3 days on the Ticats. I'm the new Louis Butko, pretty much. Every day you can hear
Louis
me.
Who? Yeah, you were on with Louis on Ticats today. Of course, the Coach O show. A lot of great stuff from you and Coach O, and some great information, a couple of laughs. So that's, of course, a must listen on the Ticats Audio Network. Also, Ticats fans, it's time to ride on our strength from now until October 13. Purchase 4 eligible Hercules passenger or light truck tires to receive a $100 Ticats rewards card. Be entered to win our road trip sweepstakes. Available at Active Green and Ross Ontario locations, or visit HerculesTires.com/AGR rewards. So, Luke, looking at the season, I think the 3 wins for the Tiger Cats were the 3 most important games for them. I'm not going to go down the must-win lane again, but let's go through them. So, they took on Ottawa. Both teams were 0-4. Couldn't go to 0-5 for the Tiger Cats if they were hoping for first or second place. So they got that first win. So to me, that was a crucial game against another 0-4 team to get that victory. What do you think?
Yep, it was crucial. And they had the unusual situation of undefeated against undefeated with Edmonton and undefeated and undefeated against Ottawa. And the Ticats, that was at a moment where you and I were both kind of saying, yeah, and it was, it's time to break that streak, which the Ticats were able to. That was a great first win, yeah. Yeah,
all defeated games. So they got the first win, but then they lost to BC after getting that win against Ottawa, the Tiger Cats did, and they were 1-5 coming up against Montreal. Montreal had just picked up their second win. So that game at Tim Hortons Field, that 24-17 victory, to me, that was, again, another very important victory for the Tiger Cats. If they didn't get that, things could be a lot different. Do you agree with that, keeping pace with Montreal and winning that game?
Huge, and that's it. Keeping pace with Montreal at that time, that was big to stay neck and neck with Montreal and not get that 2-game behind stretch of Montreal. That was a rough fourth quarter in that Montreal game. Things got a little scary, like they have many times early in the season. But that time they were able to hang on, and that, you're right, big victory.
So Tiger Cats, we know, have 3 wins. So their 3 wins, to me, have been just massive timing. Last week against Toronto, they had lost the first meeting against the Argos. They couldn't lose the first 2 if they hoped to win the season series with 2 games remaining. The best they could have done is a split, and you want to finish first or second. Plus, Montreal came off of that improbable win in Winnipeg, beating the Bombers. So again, to keep pace with Montreal and even the series with Toronto, we didn't talk a ton about the huge impact if the Tiger Cats didn't win last week, but I think it was massive if they didn't get that victory. They could be in a bit of trouble right now.
Yeah, and in a couple ways. And first, just as Ticats analysts and for fans who are the listeners, of course, I mean, it was just huge to stay, just behind Toronto in the rankings, to have sort of that momentum in the series that's going to continue. But in just a broader CFL sense, the experiment of 4 games out of 5 against the same team is going very well, actually. Right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of haters out there for the 4 times against Toronto in 5 weeks, but they split the first 2 games. I mean, as onlookers in the CFL, you can't really ask for a better scenario. Now you go into a very meaningful back-to-back again after this break where Hamilton plays Montreal. And so as sort of ugly as the East looked in the first third of the season, the first 6 games, it's actually a very interesting layout now, where all these teams keep on beating each other to stay kind of close, even though ugly comparative to the West, but the East is still very exciting.
Absolutely it is. And if I was asking myself, if somebody came up to me and said, hey, midway point of the season, Tiger Cats are going to be 3-6, I probably would have said no way. And if so, season's probably not going to end well.
Right.
However, 3-6, they're still in it. Second place, chance to even improve their position against Montreal. Was there ever a point that you felt the season was maybe getting away from the Tiger Cats?
Well, the games that you just recapped, like maybe we would have if the Ottawa game went sideways.
Yes.
And it really would have started to look a little, dire. But we were always comparing it to 2017, right from the start of the season. We were kind of saying, is this another 2017 where the Ticats went 0-8? And kind of right from the start, hand in hand with that, everyone's opinion was sort of no. Like, things do look a little bit different and a little bit more optimistic, even though the losses were piling up early on. And so the reality of it is that it never was out of reach, and the Ticats have hung on and started to turn things in the right direction. Maybe just in time, or if not just in time, when they needed to. Timely, yes.
Like, every victory has been, they need it and they got it. And now first place is still a realistic opportunity at 3-6. So it's just been a fascinating season, and they've done what they've had to do at certain times. You mentioned the 4 games against Toronto over a 5-week span, or a 5-game span. The one issue is the rivalry and how physical it is, and injuries piling up for both teams. We saw it last week where the Tiger Cats were hit hard on offense. No Braylon Addison, no Dane Evans. They were still able to become victorious. The defense stayed pretty much the same, but now going into this Montreal game, the offense is staying pretty much the same. The only change is Jalen Morton goes to the practice roster, and Dane Evans will dress as the third-string quarterback. But the stories on the defense, Luke, it's some major players out, both corners. Jamal Roll, Ciante Evans, they're out. Des Lawrence comes in, and Alden Darby is healthy. And Simone Lawrence, he got injured, went to the sideline against Toronto, came back, and he was a man on fire. He played phenomenal, and now he's going to be out. So maybe he came back and played through an injury just out of the heart he has. But Kyle Wilson is healthy enough to step into that will linebacker position. What are your thoughts on the injuries to defense?
Yeah, it's a bit of an eye roll for the Ticats. Like, holy smokes, I can't believe that we're dealing with this now. And the beginning of the season, we were talking about the injury bug in the offensive line, right? And that's been ongoing and is still. I mean, Chris Van Zyl is still on the 6th game, and that's not totally changed, but they have had at least some consistency in the last weeks. Then we saw the offense, like you said, and especially the receiving core. And now it's to the defense too. And so it's like every phase, and the special teams has had major players missing from the lineup for weeks. A few of those guys who find themselves on all 4 of the major special teams units have not been able to dress. And so it has really spread through each phase of the team. They've also started to get some wins as they've gone on here through the second half. So, interesting to see Dane on the field at third string, and I think you can take that to sort of mean that they're pleased enough with his injury to have him out there in the event that he's the last case scenario. But obviously, I think you can assume he's probably still dealing with stuff too. Matt Shultz, although he's starting this week, didn't even play. He played 3/4 of the game, so he missed the entire third quarter and came back out and performed very well, similar to how Simone, clearly struggling with an injury, came out and made a couple huge tackles in the fourth quarter. So they're finding ways to battle through it, but man, the injury bug is running wild through the Ticats.
Yeah, I smile every time I hear Coach O say it's not the practice roster, it's the waiting room. I think that's just a great way of referring to it. And hey, that waiting room has been called on a few times, and guys have stepped up and taken advantage of opportunities.
Absolutely, yeah. You've seen a couple young guys, and you also see guys roll in from other places. Like Mike Jones came in, sure enough, that bug caught up with Mike as well after he was putting on a pretty good show in Toronto. So, yeah, it's wild, man. And who knows how the season progresses, who's going to end up playing well. You like to have, you mentioned Alden Darby, and it's, such a bonus to the Ticats to have a guy like that who can bounce around. He started at half when the season opened for Cariel Brooks, and now he's going to be playing corner, and he's a guy who can kind of travel around the secondary and fill in where you need him.
Yeah, spent some time at linebacker in the preseason, so he is a versatile guy.
Yeah.
You mentioned Matt Shultz. I thought he played fast. His reads were quick. He made a decision whether to pass or run. Watched him in practice. I thought he looked really sharp, so whatever was bothering him in the third quarter didn't appear to bother him in practice, although that's a lot different than game action. So hopefully he's 100%. But it wasn't a lot of passing yards thrown. Fewest of the season, 180 for the Tiger Cats, but their fourth best yards per pass. So they didn't throw as much. What did you think of Shultz against Toronto?
I was really pleased with his just game management, and in particular his ability to piece together a pretty good game after that early interception, which was really damaging at that time of the game. I mean, that was a really costly error to make, and like we've said, he had to leave the game for whatever that was that he's dealing with. He's starting this week, but he was obviously dealing with something. Came back in, and I thought he threw a few very impressive balls in the fourth quarter, most notably the touchdown pass to Tim White. And I love it. I mean, he took a shot down the field to a guy who he trusted to make the play, and that came through for him. And but in addition to that throw, there was a couple comebacks on the sidelines that I just thought he was in the pocket, he was patient, and he was on time with the throw, confident, and had the ability to run the offense. And that's why the Ticats, good on them for going and getting a guy like that in the offseason where you can still win games even if your number one is not on the field.
Luke, you mentioned the interception that Matt Shultz threw against the Argos. Again, Ticats lost the turnover battle, but won the game, so that's another positive in the season for the Tiger Cats. But I went through, and they've had 23 fumbles or interceptions, and the opposition has scored on those 14 times, which is 61% of the time. It just seems if the Tiger Cats make a mistake, they don't get away with it. They haven't been able to get away with it through the first half of the season. Have you seen something like that before?
I not that I can really remember, honestly, RJ. And if you close your eyes right now, can't you picture a handful of them, right on the field where they were, back towards their own end zone,
Yep.
or for a touchdown, on a defensive touchdown on that play. Yeah, there's been some untimely ones, and they haven't had a lot of, that classic interception that's harmless is that second down bomb that gets intercepted. You might as well have punted the ball anyways, that kind of thing. That has not been the interceptions that the Ticats have had. They've had, interception by a defensive, end, a box player, returned in their own end. So it's been harmful, and it's interesting. 2 of their 3 wins, they've lost the turnover ratio. They've battled. They've had to fight that and had to overcome even that in the victories they've won. So hard. McLeod Bethel-Thompson has done an unbelievable job of protecting the football in interceptions in the last stretch of weeks here. He's got a string of passing attempts going without an interception that's pretty impressive right now, well over 100. And I'd love to see this defense take the ball away a little bit more, and it's not because it's not like the Ticats have sort of stopped that massive bleeding, right? Early in the season, we were talking about 4 or 5 turnovers a game, right?
Yes. Yeah, costly turnovers. Let's talk a bit about the last game against Montreal. We mentioned earlier, big win that the Tiger Cats needed, 24-17. Everything was looking like it was going to be easy, cruise to victory. They outscored Montreal in the third quarter, 14-0. And then Montreal outscored Hamilton in the fourth quarter, 11-0. Maybe the play of the year, the play of the season so far. It looked bad at the time. Stavros Katsantonis, the hit on Trevor Harris. He got roughing the passer. But just think if you're a Tiger Cats fan and your starting quarterback got taken out by the injury spotter on the very last play of the game. You're on the 8-yard line, a chance to tie the game with your quarterback who's on fire, and you have to bring in your backup quarterback who's thrown 2 passes all season long, and Dominic Davis throws an interception to Cam Kelly. Game over, Tiger Cats win. It was just a really odd ending to that game against Montreal, like it was meant to be for the Tiger Cats to get that victory. The football gods smiled upon them in that one in the end. Unfortunately, Trevor Harris was okay, so that's the good news. But Montreal, obviously, that didn't sit great with them on the last play of the game. They couldn't have Harris in there. And
you said it right. He was kind of on fire. I mean, he was kind of stringing together a pretty impressive end of the game there. We saw the same thing happen to Zach Collaros early in the season, and where he, in the end of the game and in crucial moments, he was taken out not because he was injured, but by an injury spotter. And you and I feel like we've had a couple things in the booth lately that we've talked about that are sort of interesting rules and game adjustments that are having to do with player safety. And this is kind of a wrinkle that has to get ironed out too. I don't know if it's right or appropriate that the team who suffers from the illegal hit or the roughing the passer or the late contact gets punished by having their player removed from the game. I mean, it's a little questionable. I gotta work my way through that mentally. Understanding that it is for player safety. I mean, it is what it is, but it's an unfortunate part of the game. Ticat fans were very fortunate at that. Not to say that that Montreal was definitely going to score or win the game. They still had work to do, but. Yeah, interesting ending there. And again, sort of you left that game sort of thinking, they kind of potentially got away with one after, again, not putting on a very impressive fourth quarter. But that's what's so encouraging to me, RJ, about this last Toronto win was just the dominant fourth quarter that the Ticats had. All 3 phases really, really secured and pulled that game out of the Argonauts' reach in the fourth quarter. That was kind of by far, even having lost the turnover ratio, that was just the most impressive thing to me about that win. Yes, I agree. It had just been a topic for too long, those late game collapses for the Tiger Cats. So it's great to see, and all it takes is a game like that against the Argos to rectify it and have those questions stop, and you can move on and maybe mentally get that out of their heads, because it couldn't have been much more than a mental thing. Just it kept happening. So with Montreal, they're coming off that win against Winnipeg, so that gives them a ton of cred. Only team to beat Winnipeg this year. They have to have a lot of confidence out of that, and they're pretty confident with their defense. But Louis spoke with Sean Campbell, the Owls play-by-play announcer, on Speaking with the Enemy on the Ticats Audio Network, and he said the key for the Owls is to establish the run. I'm not convinced a team can establish the run against the Tiger Cats. I talked to Micah Johnson about it at practice, and they take so much pride in it. They're very aware of how good they are at stopping the run. And to be honest, calling the games, Luke, if team runs for more than 3 yards against this defense, I think, oh, wow, that's a pretty good run. Yeah. They're so good. So I think if the Owls are hoping to establish the run, I think that's a tough thing to do against the Tiger Cats. Yeah, it is. And that's interesting that point is made. I mean, I think it's applying pressure on Trevor Harris is the key. I think that's hugely important to have an effective defensive game against the Alouettes. But that run game, you're right. I mean, Hamilton that front four has been so good at that. Jovan Santos Knox is the tackle leader, and from his mic position, he's been able to add into that run stop as well, very, very well. The Ticats have at times, it hasn't been a slow bleed in the run game. At sometimes there's just been massive gains made on the ground in one play. They've had a couple of explosions hit on them, even in this last Toronto game. And then in between those explosions, they're fully, they've got everything stopped, So those come down to one-offs. Each one of those plays is different. And, when they eliminate some of those, then it's really hard for teams to make any hay on the ground. And you got to rely on your passer And in doing so, you have to give them time in the pocket. And so, again, those front four have also increased their rush very well as the season goes on and have increased those sacks. And Micah Johnson's name we've been talking a lot more about. Of course, Dylan Wynn and Julian Hauser, the sack leader, had an unbelievable year. So huge. Those guys play such a crucial role in the way that these games have progressed, and especially with that secondary kind of nicked up right now. It's got those guys are going to have a great one this weekend.
It was funny. Louis Butko asked Micah Johnson about, you're up to 4 sacks. He had another big game with sacks, and he kind of laughed and said, I've had a lot better games than that last game, but everybody looks at the statistics, and sometimes having a good game doesn't always show up in the stats. It's kind of an interesting...
You and I are just onlookers, RJ. We're just seeing the flash. We can't break it down in detail. Micah, I'm sure he's had many good games, and all we're talking about is the ones where he was unblocked probably.
Hey, it's all about the numbers, all about the stats.
There we go.
And a few of those stats, Tiger Cats won for the first time this season when scoring first. Those 34 points they had against Toronto, that's the most they've scored this season.
Yeah.
They've won 3 in a row at home. Of course, they're going to be on the road against Montreal. 3-1 against the East Division. They beat every team in the East. They had 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns against Toronto, which was big. Seth Smalls come in. He's hit 9 straight field goals, 9 straight converts. You love the uniform ones. They've won 3 in a row in the black tops and the gold pants.
Oh, wow.
Might not see that on the road, though.
True.
But the road is the issue. 0-4 on the road, have not won on the road. Their offensive numbers are way down on the road. They're averaging close to 30 points at home, but on the road, it's just over 14 points per game over those 4 games. So are you concerned about the road play of the Tiger Cats?
Well, every city is different to me because I think we talked about, at BMO Field, I loved playing in Toronto just because it was geographically close, but also I liked the grass. I liked the locker room. Montreal, always a great trip. Oftentimes we would take the train out there. It just makes for a fun trip, but the locker room is tough. I didn't love playing in Montreal. Never felt like I played very good there for whatever reason. And then of course going out west is a beast of its own. So, and it's interesting you bring that up because I can't remember if it was last week or the first Toronto game. You and I were talking about the league was lopsided for a week there, where all the games, more away teams had won than home teams. And that's not true with the Tiger Cats, but across the league, it was really interesting. I mean, a lot of traveling teams had been winning games, but the Ticats, like you said, have not been able to win on the road yet. And they're gonna have to, they're gonna have to if they want to make this run in the second half of the season here and be first in the East. They're gonna have to make it happen on the road a little bit. Every stadium's different. Every player is different with how they respond to that. Sometimes I'll say this, RJ, the benefit of a road game is that you are isolated from the world for that day and a half before. And so you get to go out there, you're with the team, it's a little bit more of a structured pre-game day when you're on the road. Sometimes that can lead to a better performance. So, it just depends on that stadium and that day for the team.
Yeah, that's interesting. They really haven't had a road trip for a while. They did play in Toronto. This, by the way, these next 2 games are the longest road trip of the season for the Tiger Cats. So in Montreal on Saturday and then in Toronto on Friday. So again, not really a lot of time away from Hamilton for the Tiger Cats.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. And Tim Hortons Field has been good for them. Not that they're not undefeated, of course, at home, but they've, like you said, been able to do great, especially in the second part of the early season here. And Toronto feels like the one that got away from them at BMO Field. It was just surprising how things started to go in that game. And so, I think if they could steal this one away from Montreal, I think you're lined up. I think you're in a great position going into the last back-to-back with Toronto.
Yes, for sure. And Tiger Cats travel. You and I do a lot of commuting. So if we're ever looking for tires, we know where to go, don't we?
Oh, RJ, I'm glad you asked. Tires are our thing here at the Ticats Audio Network. Ticat fans, it is time to ride on our strength. We'll fill you in on our little cheeky inside joke here. From now until October 13th, you can purchase 4 eligible Hercules passenger or light truck tires to receive a $100 Ticats rewards card and can be entered to win our road trip sweepstakes. Available at participating Active Green and Ross Ontario locations, or visit HerculesTires.com/AGR rewards.
Awesome. Yeah. And how'd you get better at reading sponsorships than me? That didn't take you long.
Yeah. Well, communications at Cornell. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I have. Now, you're not going to be at the game, Luke.
I'm not going to be at the game this week. I have a family commitment out there, but my mentor, you're my media mentor, my football mentor as a Ticat, and the more than capable, the greatest 83 will be in the booth, and I'm sure you guys are going to call a great game.
Absolutely. Andy Fantus will be beside me. We'll have a good time. We will miss you, Luke, but you'll be back hopefully for the Toronto game, I assume.
God willing, Toronto game on the following Friday, and very exciting. The East, man, we're in for a great second half here. It's going to start taking shape.
For sure. Well, have a good trip, and we'll. I know you'll be listening to see what happens on Saturday.
That's right. Can't wait. It'll be a great one.
So, Tiger Cats will try to win back-to-back games for the first time this season. They'll try to win their first road game of the season, snap that 4-game road losing streak. It's a 4:00 Eastern Time start in Montreal. Tiger Cats Alouettes. You can listen to the game on the Ticats Audio Network. Myself and Andy Fantus will have the call. Luke, we'll chat to you very soon.
All right, RJ. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to Ticats This Week.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.